Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much for making time for us this evening, Mheshimiwa.
It's my pleasure to be with you. Alhamdulillah.
Mheshimiwa, just before we go on a very short break, to start off the conversation, you took part in the constitution development process of this country 10 years down the line, which we celebrated yesterday. How can you describe the effectiveness of this constitution? And as you're answering that, kindly also would like you to integrate in your answer, has this constitution achieved the main mandate that it was meant to achieve in the first place?
Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think to answer your question, you need to address three issues. One is to draw a distinction between writing of the Constitution and enacting it, implementation of the Constitution, and then evaluation of its impact in transforming the lives of Kenyans. So on the writing part, I think we did fairly well. It's not a perfect document. We know that something written by the hands of men and women cannot be perfect. Perfection is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's with God. So in terms of human endeavor, we did fairly well. And various experts have looked at our constitution and said it's one of the most progressive constitutions in the world. But we have not done very well in implementing the constitution. And by not doing well in implementing the constitution, we have lacked three fundamental ingredients in implementing this constitution. Number one, there is lack of political will among our leaders to implement this constitution with fidelity. And I underline that word, fidelity. Secondly, we put in place a Constitution Implementation Commission, which had a 5-year period and a possibility of extension.
Extension, yeah.
So I think it was a mistake on our part not to extend the life of that commission. And then the third one is the ability to imagine a different world that is created by this new constitution, but also more importantly, engaging citizens, including carrying out massive civic education and engagement, so the people know what are their rights and responsibilities and how this constitution is supposed to function. So that's why my position is that we are still in the right path in terms of implementing this constitution, but it is a mixed bag if you were to evaluate what its impact has been. Safe to say that some of its most transformative aspects are being felt by Kenyans, devolution being one of them, the Bill of Rights being another, and expansion of independence of the judiciary, for instance, and so on and so forth. But it's a mixed bag. If you were to quantify it, we'll say we are in the right track, but a lot more needs to be done in order to fully realize the potential of this constitution.
In that case, just a follow-up question, Honorable Abu Bakr. Now, would you suggest an amendment or a full implementation of the current constitution?
You see, when people talk about amendment, we have to contextualize and ask what do they mean by that.
Okay.
So I'll give you a context that there are two types of processes world over that lead to reform of a country's constitution, and maybe a third one.
Okay.
The first one is an elite-driven constitution reform process. And this, in normal circumstances, is driven by political actors.
Okay.
And when it is left to the political actors, they focus on what interests them. And what interests political actors in ordinary language is political power. So if you allow an elite-led review process, what you should expect would be an outcome that benefits the elite and in many cases take away from the people. The second one is a people-driven constitution review process, which is given meaning by the people themselves, and the people fully participate in enacting their own constitution. In processes such as that, like the one we had in Kenya, it will always lead to gains for the majority of the people and a wide variety of actors in the country. And then the third one is a mix of these two systems, which will also give you a mixed bag. And it is important to say, in the African continent, and in Kenya in particular, every time the executive or the leadership of the country has led a constitutional review process, it has led to citizens losing and politicians gaining. So when you talk about a review process, if you were to give an example of the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission's process that also was contributed to by the Committee of Experts, it was mainly a people-driven review process, but it had, one, a specific law to guide it, two, values and principles, three, clearly spelled out stages, and four, centered on the participation of the people. And when you say participation of the people, it was also included in the law that the outcome not only must involve the people in making that constitution, but shall faithfully reflect the view and wishes of Kenyans. So in a nutshell, what am I saying? I am saying we must learn from our past history. And those who are proposing for a review process, then we must examine the process itself, and if it reaches the noble heights a people-driven process does. We must also examine if it is in conformity with the values and principles of the current constitution. So you cannot amend the current constitution without following the constitution itself. And then thirdly, we must distinguish between two types of constitutional amendments. Amendments that can only be passed through parliament, and then what we call entrenched provisions, which are provisions that parliament alone cannot amend, and it must come back to the people, and the people must decide in a democratic, credible referendum if they accept the changes or not.
In that case, Mheshimiwa, I'm still waiting for my answer, clearly spelled answer. You have given us, thank you so much for educating us on that. But now that you've mentioned the vacuums that are there, one, you said that there's the lack of political will. Two, you said that the CIC was short-lived. Three, there was no proper civic education. This is a problem on its own. In this case, would you recommend a review which might lead to amendment, or first we focus on fully implementing the constitution, Mheshimiwa?
My position is that we should first fully implement this constitution. And if there is any review of the constitution, it must not go below the standards that we set up in the lead up to the enactment of the 2010 constitution.
Thank
and
you so much.
if you want a direct answer in terms of if you want us to discuss some of the initiatives that exist, I'm happy to discuss those in details, but we will need to give it a bit of time.
Perfectly fine, Mheshimiwa. We will get to that as we are building up the conversation. Professor Farah. Professor Farah, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Professor Farah, you are the Deputy President of the Institution of Land Surveyors of Kenya.
Yes, Institution of Surveyors of Kenya.
Yes, Institution of Land Surveyors in Kenya, yeah?
Yeah, the institution is of surveyors.
Thank you so much, Professor, for making time for us this evening.
Include evaluation.
Yes.
Land management, land administration.
Okay.
Building surveyors.
Professor, one of the gains that we got with the 2010 Constitution is the giving birth of the National Land Commission, which was inherently supposed to address the historical land injustices in the country for a very long time. correct?
Yes, indeed.
Has that been the case over the past 10 years?
No. Um, so first of all, let me say that the Constitution entrenched, the issues of land, whole chapter 5 on land and section 1 of that chapter deals with land. So that itself is a big achievement for the land sector that recognizes the important economic, social of land that is given a chapter. Now coming to the National Land Commission work on historical injustices, indeed the legislation that followed enactment of the Constitution, that is the Land National Land Commission Act 2012, which stipulates the functions of National Land Commission, and in particular, the historical injustices, how it should be done. As you realize, there are many ways these injustices, came up from colonial time to post-independence government, where communities, individuals lost land through government programs,
Yes,
settlement
Professor.
programs. So what I wish to come to your answer, I know we're running out of time,
Yeah.
that the National Land Commission started this initiative, but the law was saying that this work must come to an end in 5 years' time, which ended in 2017, before the National Land Commission could really effectively and do justice to this important historical event.
Professor,
So I can say some work was done, but obviously a lot needs to be done in unfortunately, it's tied, the hands are tied now because the law stipulated that all that function of historical settlement be completed by 2017, which unfortunately was not possible. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Professor, for that comprehensive answer, Professor. However, the question is a bit straight to the point. We agree that there has been historical injustices for as far as land is concerned in the country, correct?
Correct.
Has the NLC, the National Land Commission, been able to address this situation over the past 10 years?
As I said, this is one of the functions of the National Land Commission.
Yes.
And some work was started, but unfortunately could not be for two reasons. I've already mentioned time limits by the legislation. Okay. And the other is, I think, the mechanism for settling historical injustice as provided for by the legislation probably needs to be improved in the coming amendments of the laws.
Yes.
So that more resources, probably the judiciary powers, or a autonomous commission or subcommission to handle this effectively with proper resources.
Okay. Professor, I'm going to ask you to hold on there, inshallah, and so is Mheshimiwa Abubakar Zaid. You need to pay your bills, so we're going for a very short break. But again, when we come back, we are going to first of all hear what Kenyans had to say on the streets for as far as constitutional amendment is concerned. And if this constitution is going to be amended, then what are we going to focus on? Of course, as Mheshimiwa said, that there are many ways that this constitution can be amended. One of them is political, which is what you're witnessing right now in the country. So what if they want to expand it? What if they want to amend it? Then what should be looked at? What should be considered? This and much more after the break. Please do not go away. We'll be right back.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
قال تعالى في محكم تنزيله بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
Ninasaha kutoka pwani.
هذا الدين قال الله قال الرسول قال الصحابة هم أولو العرفان. انتهى.
Ili kuongoza kwenye njia iliyonyoka.
Sikizeni hadithi hii ya Mtume alayhi salatu wasalam.
Hakuna atakayeweza kumfungia mtu mlango ambaye Mwenyezi Mungu aliyemfungulia.
Kuimarisha imani yako.
Thabbit qulubana ala dinik wa ala ta'atik.
Ungana na mashekh wetu kutoka pwani kwenye mimbar.
Mimbar zinamwakilisha Mtume sallallahu alayhi wasallam.
Ni Jumamosi na wakati saa 3 usiku katika Horizon TV, runinga uipendayo.
Thank you so much for keeping it live, Real Talk, right here with Faisal Kassim, only on Horizon TV. Now, we ask Kenyans, as we are celebrating at least 10 years of the new constitution, and right now, Kenyans are talking about the amendment of the constitution. So if at all it has to be amended, if it is going to be amended, then what should be considered? And these are Kenyans' views on the streets of Nairobi. Teddy, bro.
We can really celebrate much about it. It has brought much of freedom. It has empowered the common mwananchi. But most of the politicians and what is happening in the country, they have abused it. So if they can much look at it and they stop much of the politics about the constitution and deliver to a mwananchi, it's something we can benefit more about it.
There is a lot we can celebrate after 10 years. One, as a proud Kenyan, we have a devolved government which was not there before the constitution. And the breakdown of the finance or the finance from the national government to the county government is just amazing. Before, president was the overall of everything. But since we have counties, money are coming from national government to the county government, to the common mwananchi.
If they looked at it in the sober mind, there are some clauses they can amend that still continue to deliver good benefit for the mwananchi.
We have a lot we can amend. One, I don't see why we should have so many counties in Kenya, because some counties, they are too small. We should submerge currently whatever we are facing in this country. It is looting of the money everywhere, every corner. It is, as much as we devolved the government, still we need to have mechanisms on how we can protect our resources, because it's like common mwananchi has no voice.
Mostly they can look about the leadership. The leadership is the most sensitive thing here, because like almost every time we are fighting after the election, like Kenya, the generation now we are every time we are on campaigning mode, so we have no time to work. They just after just the election we start another campaign. They should look at it so that they can balance, whereby everyone will benefit from it.
Thanks so much, my director and producer, Suleiman Nachasa of Tumbo, for that. Now, Mheshimiwa Abubakar Zain, you've had Kenya's views on that. And as we said before the break, the current process is being spearheaded more by the political elites. So this is something that we are talking about matter of when His Excellency the President came out the day before yesterday in his address of the nation and said that it is time to amend this constitution. From where you are sitting, having taken part in the drafting of the current constitution, writing part of the current constitution, if we are to amend this constitution, what would you suggest to be amended?
See, your question assumes that we can make a case for amendment. I would like to persuade you and make a case for not amending this constitution. Let me start with the timing. The timing is absolutely wrong. You know it, all Kenyans know it, that the country is going, and the world is going through the challenges posed by COVID-19 pandemic. We have a situation where these are matters of life and death. People are dying. We are not able to provide even the most basic of protective gear to our frontline workers, including doctors, nurses, and first responders. We have many Kenyans who have lost their livelihoods. Many companies have shut down. Many people can no longer pay rent. People are finding it even difficult to even feed their own families. We are in a situation of dharura, if you like. So when you are facing such insurmountable challenges, how do you make a case for one, undertaking a political process that will require you to completely ignore all the guidelines for addressing this pandemic, including social distancing, including not holding gathering of many people, including the free participation and meaningful participation of the people, including taking away money from critical sectors that allows even people to just survive for a political process. How do you justify that? Are you doing it for the interest of the people, or are you doing it for your own personal selfish interests? My second objection is what you ask the good professor and what you asked me. So you're asking why, for example, were the historical injustices not addressed while the Constitution allowed it? Let's start with the first problem. Why did we put in place a legislative framework that established such a small window to address these historical injustices? That in itself is going against the principles of the current Constitution. Let me give you two other examples concerning historical injustices. There are Kenyans who were waiting for solutions from government, and they were dismayed that the government was not helping, so they went to court. And the court had their cases, and they found in favor of the people. And they were told that since the state violated your rights, we would like to give you back some form of relief. And they gave them awards, and the government has refused to recognize those awards and pay. It has refused to recognize the judgments of the courts. We also have a situation where the government has completely rejected very many court orders. The people go to seek their relief in court using the Constitution. Then the Constitution, the government refuses to respect the same Constitution, and then they refuse to obey court orders. So when you refuse to obey court orders, which is the fundamental cardinal principle of the rule of law, it raises the question of trust. Can we trust the same people who are overseeing one of the most corrupt regimes ever to be set up in Kenya? They are violating rights of citizens even to demonstrate, which is allowed by the Constitution. And then you are saying that the same people are the ones who should now be entrusted with the review process. Let me make last 2 quick points. I know you want to interject, but one, currently as we speak, we do not have a credible electoral management body. The IEBC does not even have a quorum to make decisions. So who is going to oversee this referendum if there's going to be a referendum? And when people are giving examples and say, we want this or that, there has to be a mechanism under which people are able to exercise their rights. And then lastly, since you asked, I'm going to give you a number of examples of areas that may need reform that the political class will not touch it. Let me start with land. The reason that we have not made any progress on land reform, including addressing historical injustices, is because many of the beneficiaries of those historical claims are sitting in high places in government. And they cannot, you are asking them to give up what they have acquired illegally. So you have that dilemma. So my issue would be that when they say, for example, that we need land reform, we try to pass certain matters that a political class refused in the constitutional review process. So let me give you examples. Why do we have public land that is allocated to national government? Why would national government that does not have a physical geographical space be accorded an opportunity to oversee public land? At that time, we wanted to return all public land in the hands of the county government. Because the national government, what is the interest of national government is our international borders and our territorial waters. That is what the interest of the national government would be for security and defense purposes. But otherwise, the national government should not be interested in land at all. Do you think that they will make land reform of that nature? Let me give you another example. On leadership and integrity, they went and made legislation that does not bind, that is a divergent between the constitutional principles on one hand and the interest of political leaders on the other. So that a critical component of our constitution, which was identified by the people, was that we have a crisis of leadership and we have a crisis of integrity. Both of those have still not been addressed by the current administration.
Interesting. So, Mheshimiwa, just a follow-up question and a quick one. Now you're saying that if land matters is devolved and the commission abolished and then it's handled at the county government, do you think it will solve some of these problems?
Why shouldn't if each county form its own commission, and then you have a national commission that will only deal with the inter-county issues and boundary disputes or boundary issues? Why not? Secondly, let me give you another example. You see, if you talk about what other functions were not devolved, security was not devolved, and we know if you look at every aspect of security and peace discourse, there is an element that is local, and then there's an element that's national. You cannot impose peace from the national government. You must involve local people. So at best, security should be a shared function. But now, security is an exclusive function of the national government. Are they willing to consider sharing of security function? Same thing, we did not devolve the judicial function. Why can't we devolve the judicial function? We can devolve the judicial function so magistrate courts and possibly high courts are handled at county level, and only Court of Appeal and Supreme Court are handled at national level. So these are some of the critical issues, but they will never talk about them.
Okay, Mheshimiwa. Professor Farah, Professor Sen Farah, I'm going to ask you the same question. Do you think if land matters is devolved, it's going to solve some of the problems that you face in the industry?
Yes and no. I agree with that. Yes, Mheshimiwa said many of the land issues are already, and there are a lot of land local issues in terms of rights, customs, traditions, and so on. Apart from the National Land Commission that deals with the public land, that is co-owned by both the national, I mean, there is public land owned by the national government, and most of the public land in the counties are owned by the county. So I can see majorly already land matters are devolved. Of course, the central government through the Ministry of Land still holds the land titling, land registration, which of course could be developed to improve on efficiency and the transparent management of. I agree with Mheshimiwa that probably more needs to be developed. But at the same time, institutions need to be built and strengthened, and systems in the counties, which is currently lacking. So we need to do it in a phased way to really strengthen and build these institutions so that the counties are capable to handle this complex issue of land.
Okay. Mheshimiwa, as you are wrapping up this conversation, Professor Senfar, I'm going to start with you. Do you think it's time to amend the constitution, or we still focus on fully implementing this current constitution?
I believe after 10 years, where we strongly feel as a nation, there are parts of the constitution that have not served us well in the last 10 years. I think if amendments could be done,
Okay.
because the constitution is to serve Kenya, serve us, not us. But at the same time, I totally, let's say the land sector that we've been talking about, the constitution entrenched all the major issues of land, including the principles of management. And what needs to be amended now is the legislations that make the constitution alive, or make the constitution to be implemented. And so we have been talking about historical land injustice. There are many other issues, including of government, of public land, and minimum land holding, titling programs, between institutions like the National Land Commission, Ministry of Land, county governments, that can be improved because of overlaps and ambiguities the roles and functions of the different institutions that deal with land.
Okay. Thank you.
So for me in the land sector, on the legislation that make the constitution to improve land administration and land management.
Okay.
Equitable, efficient, and sustainable land use in the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Senfara. And Mheshimiwa Abubakar Zain, in the interest of time, we're just going to come to you. And you've come also strongly and give your points as to why you think it's not the time to amend the Constitution. So the question is, if not now, when?
I think the best answer to give you is based on evidence. If you do your own research and look at every social study and opinion poll that has been carried out asking Kenyans a simple question, is Kenya going in the right direction or the wrong direction? Overwhelmingly, all the studies I've seen indicate that Kenyans believe that Kenya is going in the wrong direction. Number one. Number two, let us give it more time to implement this constitution and allow us to prepare well for the next elections. And those who are required by the constitution to retire and not to run for any further term, retire peacefully. And then once Kenyans elect a new administration, let's see if they can do better in implementing this constitution before we start discussions about can we amend the constitution. But in addressing that, let me say three things. One, there is nothing, and I underline the word nothing, that cannot be done to improve any sector in Kenya, including leadership, under the current constitution. Let me give you an example. The constitution allows the president to appoint up to 22 members of the cabinet. Up to 22. If you wanted to achieve diversity, 22, you can achieve diversity with 22. And even on that score, the current government, which has ruled in the first 5 years and now the second 5 years and the last one, they have had an opportunity to appoint a constitutional cabinet, including appointing based on gender balance and respecting the cardinal rule of not more than 2/3 of the same gender. This government has failed even that simple test. Now you want to give it a bigger test of reviewing the constitution. But also, as a person, Muslims, we must also take cognizance. The current constitution talks about fair sharing of resources. And you are seeing people debating about the principle of equitable and fair sharing of resources. Ask yourself, if we are disputing that now, those people who are very powerful now who want to change that, what will happen if you give them an opening to change the constitution? Right? And then lastly, it is bad business to mix an election calendar with a referendum calendar. We did that in 2005. And you recall what happened in 2007.
Yeah.
How can we want to repeat the same mistakes again and again? Again and again. So we must spare this nation the pain, suffering, and trauma that we learned. We must show the commission that was appointed to investigate the violence, at least at the electoral management level, the so-called Kriegler Commission, indicated certain things that need to be done to have free, fair, and credible elections. And it said, you must prepare yourself, and in that preparation, these are the timelines, and you must have a credible electoral management body 3 years to the election. We are now 2 years to the election, and we do not have a credible electoral management body. We have not even resolved the electoral justice issues that arose from the last general election. Let me give you an example. The Supreme Court of Kenya indicated and ordered the IEBC to open up the servers so that we can know what were in the servers. to date, with impunity, IBC is refusing to open up the servers. And I can see from your smile, you're seeing how futile some of these discussions are.
Maybe they're still sleeping. The Otimofo guys in France, they're still sleeping.
Subhanallah. You know, my brother, let us continue praying for this country. Let us continue to do everything that we can to help each other during these difficult times.
Yeah.
But also let us not accept to be pushed. You know, some people, I am a Muslim, so I cannot start comparing myself to animals. But you've heard some people saying they are like animals.
Yeah.
We should not lower our standards to the level of being animals. God uplifted us and made us an ummah that should be an example. And we should always tell the truth. We should always focus on integrity, uadilifu. We should always ask ourselves, people who give their promises and break them. And you know how many promises people are given in this administration and how many of them have been broken. You know, recently people are talking about homeschooling and using technology. So then people started answering, oh, we were supposed to get all the children free
laptops,
iPads and computers. People who break their word, people who break their promises, people who bring mischief on earth, people who establish corrupt systems, people who are even stealing from the poor. They cannot even see masks. They want to steal even masks which were donated for the poor. They are taking food from the mouths of babies. We are commanded, we are told, dhalimu hajiongezee ila khasara. So let us not be part of that process. Let us raise our bar and say we will stick to principles, and we would want to, all decent men and women must now stand up to be counted and say we must reject mischief, we must reject corruption, we must reject bad leadership, we must reject scatterbrain ideas, and we must commit ourselves to a better Kenya for all of us. And those who want to retire under this constitution, you know, if you change this constitution,
yeah,
even a little bit on the governance, you have also removed term limits. Did you know that?
I didn't know.
So
that.
if you remove, yeah, I mean, it happened in 1991 when we were changing from single party dictatorship to multi-party.
Yeah.
And by then, Mzee Moi had ruled Kenya for 19 years. But after changing that little section 2A, yeah, he then said, now, since you changed the constitution, I am going to start my term in 1992. So he went for another 2 terms, 1992 to 1997. Jamanini, sisi wajinga namna hiyo. So, inshallah, we ask for God's mercies and guidance, no, but we also must stand up to be counted.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Hussein Farah, and thank you so much, Honorable Abubakar Zain, for your amazing insights this evening as we were discussing matters constitution and constitution amendments. Of course, a topic that's quite emotive currently as we speak, because Kenyans have already taken sides with the ongoing Building Bridges initiative, which the report is expected to be given to His Excellency the President and the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga anytime from next week. Thereafter, we'll know what to do. Anyway, our ticket to slumber. I'm gonna be very brief because the program's manager is on my neck. So Faisal, you're taking a lot of time. You need to finish it and wind this up. Now, we have been affected by this pandemic, and all of us are all relaxed and chilled. Some have gone out of their comfort zones and tried to make ends meet, while others are still sleeping at home, hoping for better days to come. When the corona ends, when things get back to normal, these are some of the common phrases that I'm sure you've heard of from a number of people that maybe are supposed to pay you off some of your debts, or maybe you had something to do and right now they're using Corona as a scapegoat. So you there, our viewer back at home, who's waiting for Corona to end, who's waiting for things to get back to normal. World Health Organization said that Corona is going to be with us at least for the next 2 years. So you're going to stall your life at least for the next 2 years, or you're going to wake up and stand to be counted amidst this pandemic. Instead of sitting there and counting the days since Corona started, why don't you from tomorrow, being the 29th of August, wake up and make the days count from tomorrow? Instead of waiting for things to end, why not start doing something from tomorrow? Stop counting the days, make the days count. I've been your host, Faisal Kassim, and this has been the Live Real Talk. Thank you so much for keeping us company. Thank you so much for the crew who have been here and making these things possible. And thank you so much to our amazing guests, Honorable Abu Bakr Zain and Professor Hussein Farah. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for making time this evening. Until next week, same place, same time, see you. I've been your host, Faisal Kassim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
قال تعالى في محكم تنزيله بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
Ninasaha kutoka pwani.
هذا الدين قال الله قال الرسول قال الصحابة هم أولو العرفان انتهى.
Ili kuongoza kwenye njia iliyonyoka.
Sikizeni hadithi hii ya Mtume alayhi salatu wasalam.
Hakuna atakayeweza kumfungia mtu mlango ambaye Mwenyezi Mungu aliyemfungulia.
Kuimarisha imani yako.
ثبت قلوبنا على دينك وعلى طاعتك.